We're not at a moment where there's going to be decisive action. The climate crisis is dramatically getting worse, and it's getting worse at an accelerating rate. The global objective of keeping the temperature below 1.5 degrees C is already lost.
Welcome to this episode of Sustainability Karma. I'm your host, Rajiv Tikoo. Today, we have a very special guest with us, Prof Jeffrey D Sachs. He is a noted economist, best-selling author, and an authority on sustainable development. Welcome to this episode of Sustainability Karma, Prof Sachs.
Good to be with you. Thank you so much.
What's your expectation from COP29?
Unfortunately, not very much. We are a bit in a drift right now internationally. The climate crisis gets worse. The actions being taken by governments remain completely inadequate. The need for financing by the low income and the lower middle income countries, in other words, financing for investments in clean energy and in safe, resilient physical environment, the money is just not there. The rich countries have promised time and again that they would be offering grants and loans. They don't come through. This time, there's supposed to be a new financial pledge made. We'll see. But given the very weak leadership, I'd say non-existent leadership in the United States, given the geopolitical tensions and preoccupations, one can't be very optimistic about decisive breakthroughs right now.
Would you say that it's very unrealistic to expect a commitment of $1 trillion per year?
I would say to actually achieve such an amount would be astounding. Announcements of various kinds could be made that are hand-waving. We had the announcement of $100 billion a year, at least by the year 2020, made back in 2009. Now, this was very interesting. The rich countries said basically a decade ahead of their own self-prescribed schedule that they would make available $100 billion in climate finance. They never achieved that. They never defined the terms. They never said what it would mean to make available. Is that grants, loans, if loans, on what terms? The whole thing was 10 years of delay, prevarication, hand-waving, never a serious and honest analytical exercise, much less a policy exercise. So now we've had for many, many years countless reports about the need for trillions of dollars of energy infrastructure investment and climate adaptation investment. They make clear that at least for the countries that are below investment grade creditworthiness, those countries can't access such amounts that they need on their own. But the actual change of policies to make such large flows available, that hasn't happened, and it's not going to happen right now. The U.S. administration is at its end. It was a basically ineffective administration in any event. Depending on the U.S. elections, things could be much worse from a U.S. policy point of view because Trump administration, again, might openly walk out of all international agreements. This is quite possible. So we're not at a moment where there's going to be decisive action, unfortunately. Of course, I call for it every day. My colleagues at the UN call for it every day. I don't want to rule out good luck, and I don't want to sound cynical, of course, because we need such action. But the fact of the matter is global leadership is extraordinarily weak. Now, in the meantime, nature doesn't care about any of this. It just proceeds with warming, with more disasters, with new record-setting temperatures, massive heat waves, massive forest fires, massive droughts, massive floods. So it's not as if we're just playing a political game and life goes on, the climate crisis is dramatically getting worse, and it's getting worse at an accelerating rate. The rate of warming has perhaps doubled now in terms of the rise of temperature per decade compared to what the rise was, say, between 1970 and 2010. During that period, the temperature increased by around 0.18 degrees Celsius every decade. Now it seems pretty clear that the temperature is increasing at a rate of beyond 0.3 degrees Celsius each decade, meaning that the global objective of keeping the temperature below 1.5 degrees C is already lost. Will go way beyond that and possibly far beyond 2 degrees Celsius rise, even 3 degrees Celsius rise.
This time we also don't see that kind of intent, with quite a few heads of state not attending the COP. Also, lots of financial institutions heads are also not attending it. So what could be the reason that...
There are a lot of meetings around the year. There's a lot of geopolitical tensions. There are perhaps low expectations. One more point to add. On the calendar of the Paris Climate Agreement itself, there is a 5-year cycle in which governments are to raise their commitments in what are called the nationally determined contributions. And the next round for that is not this year, COP29, it's next year, which will be in Brazil at COP30. So in a way, this year, the main formal objective under the treaty is supposed to be a new agreement on financial targets. Whether something comes or not, we'll see. But as we've said, the likelihood of something being implemented at a large scale is quite low. Next year is supposed to be the revised nationally determined contributions. In a way, it may be that this is an off year in the cycle of the meetings, and next year will have a renewed prominence. Again, U.S. politics, global politics, geopolitics will affect all of this.
Would you at least expect some progress on carbon trading? We have seen some progress on Article 6, of course, in recent times. Would you expect some progress?
There can be progress. I'm not a big believer that is a decisive instrument for global change. Others are much more interested in it than I am. But in any event, yes, there is some progress on carbon trading, and it could play a constructive role. I just don't view that as a decisive issue in the areas of commitments on national plans or on the international financing.
Coming back to SDGs now, we are also lagging on progress on SDGs with hardly 16% of our targets on track actually. What would be done to accelerate progress?
With the Sustainable Development Goals, which include the climate action, but also include what are supposed to be political guarantees of access to education, access to healthcare, access to safe water and sanitation, all through public investments. We face the same issue that the level of global cooperation is low, the level of political commitment is low, and the financing is completely inadequate for half the world. So this is yet another issue that has been reaffirmed at a political level in terms of statements, exhortation, how crucial it is to achieve the SDGs. But in terms of action, the actions are very, very weak. Now, just as there are these conferences of the parties or the COP meetings for climate, there are also what are supposed to be important summits for the SDGs. And one that will be coming up in 2025 is what's called the Financing for Development Summit. This happens every 10 years, and it's supposed to be the place where the world leaders agree on an overarching global financial architecture to ensure that not only the rich countries, but the poorer countries can finance their sustainable development. This next Financing for Development Conference, which will be the fourth in this series, once every 10 years, will take place in Madrid between June 30th and July 3rd, 2025. That's what I'm working on right now every day, is to try one way or another to have real policy changes in how our financial institutions work, how our banks work, how the credit rating agencies work, how the IMF and the World Bank work, so that we can actually finance the sustainable development goals. Because at the core, these sustainable development goals are not only moral commitments or political commitments, they are financial objectives because they're about investing in the lives of people. And we need finance to make the investments at scale to achieve these goals.
There have been calls for extending the timeline of SDGs to 2050 or so.
I believe that's necessary anyway, even when the goals were set in 2015 for the year 2030. Even under the best of circumstances, for some of the goals, that was a very aggressive timeline. It will not be met. It will not be met because of lack of global will, global cooperation, miserable geopolitics. I think in miserable leadership or failure of leadership from the United States, I might add, COVID, the wars in Ukraine, and so forth. There are a lot of reasons why, even with the timeline we had, the world has fallen far behind what it could have done. In any event, the framework that what we're aiming for is to combine the economic progress, the social fairness, and the environmental sustainability, the three big pillars of sustainable development. That's going to remain true after 2030. So my own recommendation is that because these goals are meritorious, because they're actually crucial for us, because we are behind, because they are complicated and long-term, because we need to get our act together, let's not just invent a new label and a new approach. Let's make this work. And so my own recommendation is that we keep this framework. We accelerate what we're doing. We try to accomplish as much as we can by 2030, but we understand that we're going to need to mid-century to achieve what we are setting out to achieve. One advantage of that, by the way, is that one of the things we really need to change in how our governments work is their time horizon. A typical government has a time horizon of an annual budget or a political cycle between national elections. But we need governments actually to have a vision and a time horizon of a generation to mid-century, because the planning that we need to get done on how our countries work, how our energy system works, how our infrastructure works, how artificial intelligence will be incorporated into the economy, how transport needs will be met, how our burgeoning urban environments will have adequate infrastructure. All of these are challenges that can't be met in a year or even in 5 years. They require 20 or 25 years, but our governments are typically very bad at looking ahead at that time horizon. So one advantage of having the goals reset for the year 2050 is that it might help to teach governments to have a longer term vision.
Would it also call for revisiting goals themselves, apart from the timelines, given that times are changing?
Absolutely. I think the main idea, at least my own idea, is don't pull the rug out from governments that have been trying to implement this. This is a complicated agenda. Many governments have spent many years organizing interagency cooperation, having the ministries of planning and economy take on the goals, creating metrics, for the goals and so on. Don't pull the rug out from all of that. But at the same time, yes, we're in a different place from where we were in 2015. First, even basic things like the climate crisis are going to look worse for the next 25 years than we might have hoped they would be at this stage. So we have to put added emphasis on that. Second is the technological change offers new approaches, new opportunities, and new threats. And of course, on everybody's mind is what is artificial intelligence going to do to work, to the labor market, to the ability to deliver goods and services. This is a big deal. And so no doubt there would be new goals and targets related to the digital economy, because that was underemphasized in 2015. Yet that can be incorporated without overturning the entire edifice.
Finally, what are your thoughts on India's progress on SDGs?
India has been the fast-growing economy and pace setter for a number of years now. China had that mantle during 1980 to 2020. I think India has it now. It has been a fast-growing country, fast-growing economy, tremendous expertise in the digital side, many breakthroughs at scale. India is the place where, of course, everybody knows that even the vegetable vendor on the side of the road in a rural area is online getting digital payments. This is a real transformation in a short period of time. My first visit to India is about 45 years ago. And everything then was filled out in triplicate, no matter what you did. So it was incredibly time-consuming, bureaucratic. Now it's digitized. I think that India will continue to have rapid growth. I want India, of course, to do two huge things. One, to transform India's energy system, which needs actually to expand in the amount of energy produced because of the burgeoning economy, but to have it clean rather than coal-based. So this is one crucial task. And the second is that India, sad to say, is extraordinarily vulnerable to the global climate change that's underway. Of course, India has some of the record temperatures in the world. Each year, these heat waves in places that are already very, very hot, the droughts, all the risks that India faces are very serious and require major investments in resilience and in infrastructure, and in India's lead globally to demand of the United States and the rich countries, you have to stop your heavy pollution of the world, your heavy emissions of greenhouse gases, for your own sake, but for our sake too. That is an international obligation and responsibility. There was really a powerful novel, but it was a kind of fable or warning or story of warning written by an American science fiction writer named Kim Stanley Robinson a couple of years ago, which became a bestseller, called Ministry of the Future. And it describes the next 40 or 50 years of climate change, the disasters, the terrible changes in the physical environment, the long delays in politics, and then finally the world getting its act together. And one of the core messages of that book is that some of the disasters happen in India in the book in the 2030s, and India eventually leads the world in the way out of this crisis. And I think it's very notable. I think he's a great writer, and I think he is pointing to a reality. We need India's leadership on this, because India has the technologies, it has the ability to play a global major role in policy, and it has the need itself because of its vulnerability for the whole world to take dramatic action. So this is one of the things that I'm absolutely hoping for.
Wonderful talking to you. Thanks a lot for sharing your thoughts, Professor Jeffrey Sachs. It was really nice of you to spare some time. Thank you very much.
Great to be with you. Thanks so much.
We hope you like this program. This program is also live streamed on All India Radio and aired on community radio stations. We look forward to your feedback on our WhatsApp number 9818120554. For participation in this program, write to us at sustainability.karma@gmail.com. You may also connect with us on social media. This podcast is also available on podcast hosting sites. Looking forward to meet you again at the same time next week with a new episode and a new guest. Till then, goodbye from all of us. Sustainability Karma, a podcast series with senior journalist and editor Rajiv Tikoo on sustainable development, sustainability and ESG.